Holding on to someone who doesn't want to be in your life is like gripping a rope that burns your hands. The tighter you hold, the deeper the pain, but letting go terrifies you because you believe that without them, you'll be left empty. The truth is something else. What hurts isn't losing that person, but resisting the acceptance of it. You've been taught that persistence is a proof of love, that waiting patiently will make everything better. But there's a reality few dare to tell you. When someone doesn't value you, it's not because they don't understand your love, it's because they don't want to receive it. And staying there, waiting for something that will never come, only destroys you. Today, I want to show you how to break that cycle. We're going to explore 7 keys of Stoic wisdom that will not only help you let go, but also help you reclaim your peace and personal power. And I assure you, the final lesson will forever change the way you view goodbyes. I'm Gabriel, and if you've ever felt that letting go is impossible, this video is for you. Stay until the end. If someone makes it clear, through their actions or absence, that they don't want to be in your life, why are you still waiting? What makes you think that if you insist a little more, everything will change? The worst part of loneliness is not being alone. It's holding on to a shadow, to someone who is no longer there or who was never truly there. It's living with the illusion that one day that person will open their eyes and see what they're losing. But the truth is, the only person losing something here is you, your peace, your dignity, and your time, which is the most valuable thing you have left. Attachment is an invisible prison. It has no bars or locks, but it keeps you trapped in a small space where only memories, hope, and the fear of letting go exist. You have built an altar in your mind for that person who doesn't choose you, who doesn't call you, who doesn't lift a finger for you, yet still controls your emotions. And every day you continue waiting is another day you deny yourself the chance to live fully. Marcus Aurelius once said that we cling to things that do not belong to us because we are afraid to face ourselves. But what if letting go wasn't the end, but the beginning of something better? A few years ago, I met a man named Richard. He was just over 60 years old and carried a story that could be yours or anyone's who has loved someone who is no longer there. His wife had left him after more than 30 years of marriage. One day, without warning, she packed her bags and left. There was no argument, no lengthy explanation, just a cold phrase. "I don't want to be here anymore." And just like that, with the same ease as closing a door, she ended their story. Richard couldn't understand. He had been a good husband, had given everything for his family, had sacrificed dreams, trips, opportunities, all in the name of love and stability. So how was it possible that now he was being abandoned as if he meant nothing? But the worst part wasn't her leaving. It was what came afterward. Richard got trapped in the question that destroys so many. What did I do wrong? He spent years analyzing every detail, every conversation, every gesture, trying to find a sign, a clue, something that would tell him he could have done something differently. Meanwhile, his life froze. He kept the TV on just to feel company, rejected every invitation because he couldn't conceive the idea of going out without her. And every night he checked his phone with the absurd hope that one day she would call. But she never did. One day, in the middle of his lament-filled routine, Richard read a quote from Epictetus that changed his perspective. "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do, and you will find peace." It was a harsh blow. He realized he had spent years resisting reality, as if his suffering could change the past. And then he made the hardest but most liberating decision of his life. He stopped waiting. Richard understood something that many never come to accept. Love is not a debt. No one owes you their presence. No one is obligated to love you just because you love them. And if someone chooses to walk away, the only dignified response is not to beg, not to insist, not to search for signs where there are none. It's to accept. Most people fear letting go because they believe it means losing. But what you truly lose when you let go is the weight of a burden that no longer belongs to you. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or denying what you felt or erasing the memories. It means freeing the space that person occupies in your mind and heart so you can fill it with something that truly deserves to be there. It means remembering that your life continues, that your worth does not depend on anyone's presence or absence, and that the time you have in this world is too valuable to waste chasing someone who doesn't want to be found. Richard was never the same after that decision. He allowed himself to cry, but he also allowed himself to laugh again. He allowed himself to miss her, but he also allowed himself to discover new ways to fill his life. And above all, he understood that nothing is more tragic than staying tied to someone who has already gone. Now I ask you, how much longer will you keep waiting? How much longer will you give someone who isn't even present control over your happiness? If you decide today to accept reality and let go of that attachment, you will not only regain your peace, but something much greater, yourself. The first step to letting go is accepting that attachment is a prison, but the second is even harder to recognize. Often, it's not love that binds you, but need. And need is not love. It's fear in disguise. Fear of loneliness, fear of uncertainty, fear of looking within yourself and encountering an emptiness you've always tried to fill with the presence of another. But have you ever wondered if you truly miss that person, or if you're just afraid of facing yourself? The problem with need is that it turns love into a transaction. You don't love freely, you love hoping to receive something in return: company, validation, security. You can't stand the idea of losing someone because deep down you believe that without that person, you're not enough. But here's the truth you need to hear. If your happiness depends on someone else, it has never been yours. It has always been in someone else's hands, ready to be destroyed the moment they decide to leave. Stoicism teaches us that the key to inner peace is not in what we have or who accompanies us, but in who we are when there is nothing and no one left. Epictetus said that true self-mastery is not being a slave to external things. Yet how many times have you felt empty when someone walks away, as if that person took your sense of identity with them? But identity is not lost with the absence of another. It's simply revealed what has always been hidden beneath the dependency. I know a woman named Clara who spent her entire life putting others above herself. First, it was her husband, a man who barely paid her any attention, but she served him devotedly because she felt that was her role. Then it was her children, to whom she gave everything, even when they were adults and no longer needed her. But one day, her husband passed away and her children built lives away from her. Clara, who had spent decades dedicated to others, found herself with an empty house and an unbearable silence. She didn't know who she was without someone to care for. She spent months trying to hold on to any excuse to keep in touch with her children, calling them constantly, offering to help with whatever they needed. But they had their lives, their worries, and didn't always respond. And every time they ignored her, she felt like her existence was losing meaning. One day, in a conversation with a friend, Clara realized something devastating. She wasn't suffering because they missed her. She was suffering because she felt invisible without them. She had built her identity around being needed by others, and now that no one needed her, she didn't know what to do with herself. But instead of getting trapped in that despair, Clara made a radical decision. She stopped seeking her value in others. She signed up for an art class she had always put off, started writing a journal to explore her own thoughts and slowly began to enjoy her own company. And one day, without even realizing it, she stopped waiting for calls. When you understand that you don't need anyone to feel complete, relationships stop being chains and become choices. You don't love because you fear loneliness. You love because you enjoy sharing without depending. You don't seek validation from others because you know that your worth is not in anyone else's hands. And here's the big lesson. When you stop loving out of need, the people who come into your life do so because they want to, not because you hold them with the desperation of someone afraid of being alone. Now look at yourself and be honest. Are you suffering because of the loss of someone or because of the fear of being with yourself? Because if it's the latter, the solution will never be with someone else. The solution is in discovering who you are when no one else is in the room, in learning to enjoy your own company, in remembering that you were created with a purpose that does not depend on the presence or absence of any person. Letting go of someone who doesn't want to be in your life is not just accepting their absence, it's accepting your own wholeness without that person. And when you achieve that, when you truly understand that you are enough on your own, you discover something amazing. You were never as alone as you thought. You just forgot how to be with yourself. If you've understood so far that attachment is a prison and that need is not love, then you're ready for the next step. We've reached the third point of this video, and this is where things start to change. Rejection is a revelation, not a tragedy. What hurts is not that someone left, but the interpretation you make of their departure. You've been taught that when someone rejects you, it means you're not enough, that something about you failed, that you could have done more. But the reality is different. Rejection is not a judgment of your worth. It's simply a sign that this person was never meant to stay in your life. Marcus Aurelius said that everything that happens is just and necessary, not because every event is pleasant, but because every event fits into the natural order of things. If someone leaves, it's because it was meant to be. If someone ignores you, it's because recognizing you was never part of their path. What causes suffering is not the absence of that person, but your resistance to accepting that their place in your story has ended. But here's the hardest and most liberating truth. You don't need to understand why someone left to be able to move on. Think of a tree. For years, it holds onto leaves that provide shade, freshness, and life. But when autumn arrives, those leaves fall away, not because the tree did something wrong, but because it's part of the natural cycle. Imagine a tree clinging to its dried leaves, refusing to let them go. It would be absurd, right? But that's exactly what you do when you hold on to someone who no longer wants to be there. You keep holding on to what no longer has life, believing that if you grip tightly enough, it will bloom again. But life doesn't work that way. Letting go is not losing. It's allowing the empty space to be filled with something new. The strategy here is simple, but it requires courage. Change the narrative of rejection. Instead of asking yourself what you did wrong, ask yourself what opportunity is opening now that that person is gone. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who was discarded, start seeing yourself as someone who was redirected. How many times in your life has something that seemed like a loss turned out to be a gift? How many times has someone leaving made space for someone better to come along, even if you didn't see it at first? The key is not to understand rejection, but to accept it as part of the natural flow of life. If this message resonates with you, subscribe and hit the like button to keep receiving content that helps you strengthen your mind and spirit. And let me know in the comments from which country you're listening and share the phrase, "I accept what I cannot change." I'm curious to see how many of you are truly ready to release the weight of the past and look forward. Stay until the end, because the final lesson we'll cover in this video is the one that can completely transform the way you understand the time you have left to live. If you've understood that rejection is not a tragedy but a revelation, it's now time to face the next big trap that keeps you bound to the past. The absence of that person is the presence of an opportunity. And although you may not see it this way right now, every emptiness that opens up in your life is not a sentence, it's a blank space that you can fill with something new. But most people don't do this. They get stuck in nostalgia, in the idealization of the past, in the comfortable suffering of those who prefer to cry over what's lost, rather than looking forward. Because accepting that someone's absence can be an opportunity means taking on great responsibility, the responsibility to rebuild yourself, to discover who you are without the emotional crutch you've been clinging to for so long. The problem is that we've been taught that loss can only be interpreted as a wound. From a young age, we are taught that when someone leaves, all that remains is emptiness, sadness, and eternal mourning. But no one tells us that in that loss, there's also an open door, a chance for growth, a new chapter waiting to be written. Seneca said, "Nothing belongs to us, only time." And yet, we live as if people were possessions, as if their presence in our lives were guaranteed until the end of time. But the reality is different. No one is obligated to stay, no one belongs to you, and you don't belong to anyone either. Think about it. Before that person entered your life, didn't you already exist? Didn't you have moments of happiness, of calm, of fulfillment? So why now do you convince yourself that without them, nothing makes sense? That's the trap. Believing that someone's love or company defines your existence is giving them power over your happiness. And when that person leaves, you feel everything collapse because you never learned to build yourself from the inside. That's the big lesson that absence can teach you, that you should never have depended on someone else to feel complete. Most people don't realize that every loss comes with a gift disguised as pain. I've known people who, after a breakup or separation, have discovered talents they never imagined, traveled, learned new things, found friendships that truly value them. But those changes only come when you stop focusing on what you lost and start asking yourself what you can gain. There are those who, after a lifetime of dedicating themselves to someone else, discover that for the first time they can do what they truly want, without asking for permission, without depending on anyone's approval. But many prefer the suffering they know over the uncertainty of the new, and so they remain in the same house with the same habits, reliving the same memories until their life becomes a museum of what was, rather than a work in progress. The question you must ask yourself is not, how do I survive without this person? But what am I going to do with the space they left? Because in that space, there are possibilities. There are opportunities you didn't see before because you were too busy holding on to a relationship that no longer existed. There are paths you can now walk without having to answer to anyone. But none of this will matter if you keep clinging to the idea that absence can only mean loss. What makes the difference between those who move forward and those who stay stuck in the past is not what they lost, but what they decided to do afterward. Today, you can keep mourning what's no longer there, or you can look at that emptiness for what it truly is, a space to build something new. But only you can make that decision. What you've done until now has brought you here, and now is where you decide whether you keep carrying the weight of what's gone or use that absence as a push to move forward. The opportunity is in front of you, but it's up to you to dare to take it. We've reached the 5th point of this video, and this is where most people trip up without realizing it. Breaking attachment is difficult, but what truly keeps you trapped is a destructive habit that has settled in your mind without you noticing. You continue to suffer for someone who doesn't even think about you. You've made pain a routine, a way of life. You wake up, and your first thought is that person. You eat, work, go out, but in the back of your mind, they're always there, like a shadow that doesn't let you move forward. You keep checking if they called, if they texted, if somehow they left a sign that they still care. But the harsh reality is that while you continue feeding that silent hope, that person is going on with their life without looking back. Suffering has become a refuge because, although it hurts, at least it keeps you connected to that story. But what have you gained from that? Wasted days, sleepless nights, opportunities missed because you were too busy mourning someone who doesn't even ask about you. While you remain trapped in a loop of memories, that person has moved on without you. Isn't it time to do the same? The human mind is tricky. It makes you believe that if you keep thinking about that person, somehow you still have control over the situation. But you don't have control. You're only sabotaging yourself. You're allowing someone who is no longer present to continue directing your life from a distance. And the worst part is that every time you obsess over what was, over what could have been, you're giving them the power to keep hurting you without even lifting a finger. The reality is simpler and harsher than you want to accept. If that person wanted to be with you, they would be. There are no excuses, no hidden signals, nothing to interpret, just the truth you so resist accepting. But here's the most important part. Breaking this pattern is possible, but no one will do it for you. No one will come to save you from your own suffering. No one will pull you out of that mental prison you've voluntarily locked yourself in. Only you can do it, and you will only do it when you stop feeding the obsessive thoughts that keep you tied to the past. The key isn't in waiting for closure, in understanding why they left, or fantasizing about a reconciliation that will never come. The key is in an internal, radical, and irrevocable decision. Stop putting your energy into someone who is no longer part of your present. Think about this. Every minute you spend missing, analyzing, waiting, is a minute you could be using to rebuild yourself. It's a minute you could be investing in you, in discovering new ways to enjoy life, in connecting with people who do value your presence. But none of this will be possible until you make the decision to let go, not just with words, but with concrete actions. How much longer will you continue giving space in your mind to someone who is no longer here? When will you decide it's time to live for yourself without depending on anyone else? Change doesn't happen overnight. There are no magic formulas or shortcuts, but there is one undeniable principle. What you feed grows. And if you keep feeding the thought of loss, the pain will only get stronger. But if starting today, you decide to feed the idea that your life goes on, that there are still experiences, people, and moments waiting for you, you will begin to regain control. Because in the end, the real question isn't why that person left. The real question is why you're still holding on to someone who let go a long time ago. A story filtered where only the good moments remain, the kind gestures, the shared laughter. But if you were completely honest with yourself, you would also remember the indifference, the signs of disinterest, the times you spoke and were not heard, the times you gave and received nothing in return. And yet, here you are, holding on to an illusion, trying to find comfort in the past that will never come. Seneca said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And this is exactly what happens when you idealize someone who turned their back on you. You don't suffer from their absence, you suffer from the story you tell yourself about what their presence meant. But if that person were really the way you imagine them, if they truly valued you as much as you believe, why aren't they here? Why didn't they come back? The answer is simple and brutal, because their story with you is over, even if you keep insisting on writing chapters that no one else will read. Life has given you an opportunity that you still haven't wanted to see, the chance to let go of the past and start building something new. But that opportunity won't be there forever. Every day you spend idealizing someone who's already gone is one less day you have to rediscover yourself to find new reasons to wake up with purpose. And the worst part is, if you stay in this inertia, there will come a point when you won't even know how to live without that sadness. You'll have gotten so used to it that it will be the only thing left. And when you look back, you'll realize that the true abandonment wasn't theirs, but yours. Because while you were waiting for someone to choose you, you stopped choosing yourself. Today, you have two paths. You can stay trapped in a story that no longer exists, or decide that you deserve something better. Not something better in the romantic sense of finding someone else, but something better in the sense of reclaiming your freedom, your dignity, your peace. But you can only do this if you stop looking at the past through rose-colored glasses and start seeing things for what they truly were. Because only when you see the truth, unembellished, will you finally be able to let go and move forward. If you've made it this far, it's because deep down, you know that idealizing someone who turned their back on you has only kept you chained to a past that no longer exists. But understanding this is not enough. Now, we reach the seventh and final point of this video, the one that will truly make the difference if you choose to apply it. Accepting and letting go is the most powerful act of self-love. Because holding on to someone who is no longer here is not love, it's self-destruction. And letting go, even though it hurts, is the only way to reclaim the peace you've been seeking. Look at yourself closely. Think about all the days you've lost lamenting, all the nights when insomnia consumed you, all the times you've put your happiness on hold as if life were paused until that person decided to return. Now imagine what will happen if you continue down this same path for another 5 or 10 years. Can you picture yourself in the future, sitting in the same place, with the same sadness, with the same broken story, repeating itself in your mind over and over? Do you realize the time you're sacrificing? Because every minute you spend thinking about someone who doesn't choose you is a minute you steal from your own life. There's no easy way to say this. Either you take control of your destiny now, or you'll keep being a slave to your own suffering. You can make excuses, say that the heart doesn't listen to reason, that forgetting isn't easy, that time heals all wounds. But the truth is different. Time doesn't heal anything if you keep feeding the wound. It's not time that will heal you, it's the decision to stop poisoning yourself with a memory that no longer belongs in your present. The most painful part of letting go is not the absence of that person, but the death of the story you created in your mind. It's accepting that everything you imagined, everything you hoped for, everything you thought could be, will never be. And that's hard. It hurts. But that pain is temporary, while the suffering of holding on could last a lifetime. Which do you prefer? A wound that heals over time, or an open scar that never lets you live in peace? The Stoics taught that true power is not in controlling others, but in controlling ourselves. And that's what you need to do now. Don't wait for closure, don't wait for an apology, don't wait for that person to regret their decision and come knocking at your door. Because if you keep waiting, you'll keep losing. Let go, not out of pride, not out of revenge, but for self-love. Because your life can't be reduced to the absence of someone else. Because you still have days, months, and years left to live, and wasting them on someone who doesn't value you is the greatest injustice you can commit against yourself. Today, you have the opportunity to regain control. It won't be easy, it won't be immediate, but it will be what saves you from an existence condemned to nostalgia. Letting go is not forgetting, it's freeing yourself. And if right now you feel you can't do it, ask yourself this: what's the worst that can happen if you decide to let go today? And what's the worst that can happen if you keep holding on to something that no longer exists? The answer is clear. The decision is yours. If you've made it this far, you can no longer deceive yourself. You know that what's in front of you is not a comfortable option or just a simple piece of advice to make you feel better for a while. It's a life or death decision for your peace of mind. You can continue clinging to the memory, keep feeding the sadness, keep giving someone who's already gone control over your emotions. Or you can do what few have the courage to do: let go, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The life you have now, the time you have left, is a resource you will never get back. And every day you stay chained to the past is one less day you have to write a new story. It doesn't matter how much you've suffered. It doesn't matter how many times you've felt abandoned. The key is not in what was done to you, but in what you choose to do with what you have left. Very few make it to the end of a message like this. Most prefer to distract themselves, make excuses, convince themselves that the problem is outside of them and that time, on its own, will fix everything. But you're not one of those. If you're still here, it's because something inside you understands that there's no more time to waste, that if you don't take control now, tomorrow you might find yourself with a life spent in lament, broken illusions, hopes that never came true, and that would be the real failure. That's why I want you to confirm your commitment in the comments by leaving the phrase, "Today, I choose to let go," along with your country. It's not just a comment, it's an affirmation, a step forward, a way to prove to yourself that today marks the beginning of real change. My name is Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden, a space for those willing to face the truth head-on, without adornments, without false hopes, without waiting for someone else to come rescue them. Because no one will. The only person who can save you is you. And if this message has served you, if it has touched something inside of you that needed to awaken, I invite you to subscribe and join this community of people who have decided to take control of their lives. Share this video with anyone you think might need it, because sometimes a word at the right moment can make the difference between continuing to suffer or starting to set yourself free. Don't let this conversation end here. On the screen, you have more content that can help you keep strengthening yourself, keep discovering the tools you need to live with more peace and dignity. You decide whether you close this page and go on as if nothing happened, or if you take this moment as the beginning of something new. Today I choose to let go, that's the phrase. Now tell me, what do you choose?